Today I'm going to walk you through how to set up a spreadsheet in Google Drive to help you with department and program assessment. A few things before we get going. If you're an Excel or a Sheet super user or even moderate user, this video probably isn't for you. We're going to go through some very basic steps, really intended for people who haven't used this functionality before. Second, what I'm doing here assumes a couple of things. I assume that what you're trying to do in your department or program is look at multiple pieces of student work against a rubric, and that you have normed against that rubric, and now you have a couple of readers or 3 or 4 readers in your department who are all going to look at student work, read it against the rubric, and then talk about what you're seeing in that student work. What part of what you want to do then is get averages of the reader scores and be able to kind of track how students are doing. Okay, so most basically, if I was going to do this in my department, which we have, I would go to my shared assessment drive, because everyone in my department should be on that drive. If they're not, please let me know. So in our case, that would be the religion department assessment. I would go to New, and I would create a sheet. I've already done some of this work for us, so I'm just going to pop over here. This is what we're going to set up. I know it might look a little scary, but it's really not. All right, let me walk you through the pieces of this. This top part here is where the department scored student work against a rubric. On this side, we have the categories from a rubric. So none of this data is real from student papers, but this rubric is a real rubric. This is the religion department rubric for assessing one of our student learning outcomes, the one that has to do with how well students analyze primary sources. In order to see how well students analyze primary sources, we developed 5 categories: summary, analysis, deployment of evidence, contextualization, and significance or stakes. And then we created 4 levels: outcome not demonstrated, emerging, proficient, and exemplary. This rubric is what we call a half-naked rubric, meaning we only describe the outcome not demonstrated and the proficient levels. Emerging is whatever is better than outcome not demonstrated and not as good as proficient. Exemplary is what is better than proficient. The number here is the number we're going to enter into our spreadsheet. I should say that for our assessment, we usually look at this most specifically on our 100 level courses, and we expect students to be emerging. We're really happy if they're proficient. Exemplary is amazing, but we don't really expect that. So we're looking for averages in here. Okay, so we're going to take these categories and put them here, because we're going to read each paper for all of these categories. Now you'll see what we have here is actually 3 different colored rows of the same categories. That's because we had 3 readers. So we wanted to have each reader have their own color, so they could say that when I'm reading for summary, I enter here, when someone else in the department is reading for summary here. All right, so if I was going to do this from scratch, I would go down to the second row, because we're going to put student numbers up here. Summary, analysis, evidence, contextualization, and significance. I'm pretty lazy. I like to cut and paste whenever I can, so I'm just going to highlight all of those, Control C, go down to the next cell, Control V for pasting, and then I'm going to do it one more time. To get the different colors, you simply highlight what you want to be in a different color. Go over here in your toolbar to this where it says text color, and pick a color. And then do the same thing if you want another one to have a different color. Okay, so now I have my categories. Then across here, I'm going to put the students. As you can see, we just, for the sake of this, put the students as numbers. You could do it by student number. You could make the papers anonymous in various ways. This is a very simple one, number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. All right, so now as we read, we simply put in our evaluation against this rubric of how these students are doing. So student 1 for this reader got a 2, a 1, a 2, a 0, and a 3. For this reader, a 2, 2, 2, 1, 2. Couple of things to think about as you go through this process. One of the reasons I like using Google Sheets is because multiple people in your department can be using the same sheet at the same time. So you can sit around a table, student work in front of you, have everyone have the sheet open in your assessment folder and be inputting in real time. The other thing that allows is that someone in your department can kind of keep an eye out to make sure that people are reading the papers basically the same, meaning that you are giving the same numbers or no more than a number off to each paper. So, for example, here, this person gave the contextualization of paper number 1 a 0. This person gave the paper a 1. That's perfectly reasonable. But if this was a 0 and this was a 3 and we were seeing a lot of that, we'd want to go back and renorm. Okay, so you've now set up, you have your categories, you have your students, and you're able to enter the numbers as you go. The next things we're going to do is average the reader scores. So I want to take all of this and say, what did student number 1 get as an average for summary? What did student 1 get as an average for analysis, and on and on and on. Eventually, I can do two things. Then I can average the student's entire score for kind of an overall score if I want to. I can also average all of the students on summary and then all of the students on analysis. So I'm looking for overall trends here. Sheets will do the averaging work for you. Now again, if you have 3 students, you may just do this more quickly on your head or with a calculator, but when you get to multiple students, many readers, it can be helpful to have a computer do the computing. All right, so we're going to use a formula, and how you use a formula is this. You go up to your toolbar, you're going to put an equal sign, the formula you're using, and then the cells that you want averaged. In this case, I want all of the summary cells averaged. So that is cell B2, cell B7, and cell B12. When I'm averaging or adding or doing really any kind of mathematical computation in non-continuous cells, so they don't touch each other in any ways, I use commas to separate them. That'll become important in a minute when continuous cells do something different. Okay, so let me show you how to do this when we haven't entered anything. I'm just going to make up some numbers here, 2, 3, 2, 1, 0, and I'm actually not going to watch here for reader reliability. Okay. And I'm going to do another student as well, just for kicks. So I'm reading along, I'm reading against my rubric, I'm entering my numbers, everything is going swimmingly. Now I want the summary average for these students. Can I go up here, equal sign, that tells the computer that I'm doing a formula. It already sort of sees that I may want to do a sum or an average. The problem is I don't want to average the entire column, so even though the computer is trying to be helpful, it doesn't know what I want, so I'm going to ignore that. And now I'm going to type in the cells that I want average. B2, comma, B7, B12. This sounds like I'm taking vitamins. You need parentheses around the cells. hit enter, and you now have a formula. Now, what's nice about Sheets or Excel is that sometimes it will guess what you want and sometimes it will guess correctly. I don't want to have to enter all of that for each of these. I don't have to. I can just take this cell and extend it, and it will take that formula. And now if I press on here, you'll see that it's now averaging C2, C7, and C12. It has nothing to do here, so it's not putting anything in, but if I were to go and put in numbers, ooh, that person did really well. It will start averaging for me. Okay. So now you're able to get averages for all these different things. Same thing is going to happen with analysis. Go up here, equal average, different cells of course. We're now at B3, oops, B8, and B13. Same drill, I can go here, I'm going to want averages, the same kind of averages on all of them, and now I have my averages. Again, I don't only want to average these students. Oh, one more thing. Sorry, I'll do this first. Let's say I want to give kind of an overall assessment for each student. Okay, so now I have the average for student 1, the average for student 2. I can also do an average of the averages. We'll see how this one works. I want the average of summary analysis here. So I can just go the average of B18 to B12 because my averages start here, go here. I could probably do it another way too. Note here, because I'm doing continuous cells, I'm now using a colon. So anytime you use a colon, it just means basically 2. So from B18 through B12. When you're doing non-continuous, you need commas. When you're doing continuous, you need colon. Why? I have no idea. It just works. Over here, I'm asking a slightly different question. Here, I don't want to know how student 1 did and how student 2 did and how student 3 did. I want to know overall how all of the students did on summary, how all of the students did on analysis, and so on and so forth. So here again, I'm going to use my average formula, but I'm now averaging not down, but across. I can still use my colon because I'm doing continuous cells, and I'm averaging from B18 to K18. So that's what it's going to say. I'm not going to watch me type it because sometimes that's helpful. Equals. Average, the equal sign is really important. It's what tells the machine that I'm doing a formula. K18. There you go. And again, if I were to undo all of these, you can just kind of go like this. And the computer will guess that I'm going to be using a similar formula here as well. Okay, so we've created a spreadsheet, we've entered our numbers, we've now averaged individual students, we've averaged a class. There's one more thing I'm going to tell you how to do, but it's a little bit more complicated, so that's going to be video number 2.